So the ultra-thin smartphone trend is officially a thing, and it kicked off when the Galaxy S25 Edge first dropped, very probably as Samsung's response to all of those rumors about a hydraulic-pressed iPhone. Well, that iPhone isn't just a rumor anymore, and the very first iPhone Air is finally here. The question is, which one of these skinny boys does its best to actually perform like a regular phone? And more importantly, how many corners did they have to cut to pull off this design? As always, we're gonna take a deep dive into the design, the display, performance, cameras, and battery to figure out which one of these lightweights is the greatest imposter. Hey, I'm Olive, your host here at Versus.com. Design is hands down the whole point of these two devices. Both of them are absolutely skinnier than basically every flagship phone out right now. But as a fun fact, they're still both thicker than the 2016 Motorola Moto Z, the same phone that ditched the headphone jack even before the iPhone 7 did. On paper, the iPhone Air is just a smidge smaller in every dimension than the S25 Edge, but in your hand, the Air feels way more compact and comfy because of those rounder corners. Both rock titanium frames, however, the iPhone's brushed titanium is a total fingerprint magnet. The Galaxy, on the other hand, has a cleaner matte finish. For the back panels, you get frosted glass on both, ceramic shield on the iPhone, and Gorilla Glass Victus 2 on the Edge. In the weight department, the Air is already a featherweight at only 166 grams, but the Edge is even lighter at just 163 grams. For protection, both come with IP68 dust and water resistance. The Edge can hang out in clear water for 30 minutes at 1.5 meters, while the Air can survive at up to 6 meters for the same amount of time. Alright, now let's move on to the displays. The iPhone is packing a 6.5-inch LTPO OLED display with an anti-reflective coating, while the Galaxy has a slightly larger 6.7-inch LTPO AMOLED. Both support 120Hz refresh rate, and they can both drop all the way down to 1 Hz to save some battery life. We threw them under simulated sunlight at over 100,000 lux and measured the typical high brightness using a full white screen. The iPhone hit 1,122 nits, while the Galaxy was brighter at 1,646 nits. For security, you've got Apple's Face ID on the Air, while the Galaxy has an ultrasonic under-display fingerprint scanner. For a closer look at screen specs, including our measured peak brightness, feel free to pause the video right here. Now, even though the iPhone screen has a lower resolution and a lower typical brightness, we actually prefer it. It reaches a higher peak brightness, it supports more HDR formats, and on top of all that, it comes with the same anti-reflective coating we see on the iPhone 17 Pro phones. The Edge, unfortunately, doesn't get the same anti-reflective treatment as its bigger brother, the S25 Ultra. Okay, screens are great, but what about the sound coming out of these uber slim bodies? The iPhone only has a single speaker, and it's not at the bottom, it's actually at the top as the earpiece. Those little grills are actually for dual microphones. On the flip side, the Galaxy S25 Edge comes with true dual stereo speakers, one at the top and one at the bottom. Unsurprisingly, the Galaxy sounds way punchier with deeper bass and higher volume levels. The iPhone sounds alright, but it's noticeably quieter and lacks depth. By the way, we have noticed a ton of you guys are watching our videos, but haven't hit that subscribe button yet. So if you want to keep getting more awesome tech content, do a karate chop on that subscribe button. And if so far you're curious about any of these slender boys and want to check them out, then be sure to check out the direct links in the description below. Now let's check out the cameras. For the main shooters, the iPhone has a 48 megapixel sensor housed in a camera bar that looks suspiciously like a Google Pixel. The Galaxy gets a massive 200 megapixel cam housed in an island that ironically resembles an iPhone 16's. In outdoor shots, the iPhone leans towards a warm white balance while the Galaxy prefers a colder tone. The real accurate colors would be somewhere in the middle. However, for detail levels, the iPhone comes on top. Indoors, the iPhone pushes the contrast and saturation a bit much, whereas the Galaxy Galaxy delivers a much more authentic look, even if there's a bit of grain in the photo. Only Samsung thought to include an ultra-wide camera, a 12-megapixel shooter, despite the phone's thinness. The iPhone Air, just like the budget 16e, gives you absolutely nothing in this department. The ultra-wide shots from the Galaxy are a bit more punchy in contrast than its main camera, but the overall quality is surprisingly good. And just like the main cam, colors indoors are generally accurate and not oversaturated. Though in typical Samsung fashion, our gray curtain still comes out looking a little purple. For portrait mode, the iPhone again pumps up the contrast and sharpness, while the Galaxy keeps it more natural. Edge detection is only alright on both, definitely not the best we've seen. In portraits at 2x zoom, it's the same story. The iPhone has a warmer look, while the Galaxy is more true to life. Edge detection accuracy stays exactly the same though. In our testing, we have to say the iPhone's portrait mode was frustratingly hit or miss, as sometimes the depth blur showed up in the preview, but then totally vanished in the final picture. Switching gears to video, the iPhone maxes out at 4K 60fps, while the Galaxy is capable of 8K 30fps, but for our comparisons, we film everything at 4K 30fps. Here, the iPhone has its usual slightly warmer tone that looks great, but the Galaxy portrays the white balance more accurately. Both phones, however, do a solid job of controlling the highlights. Oh, and another thing missing in the iPhone is cinematic video, a feature you'll find ready to go on the Galaxy. For ultra-wide video, the Galaxy can record up to 4K 60fps. This is a perfect example of the versatility the ultra-wide camera gives you when shooting video, while you're completely locked into one field of view with the Air. Up front, we have a very interesting new 18-megapixel square sensor on the iPhone Air, which lets you toggle between vertical and horizontal formats without having to physically rotate the phone. The Galaxy keeps it traditional with a 12-megapixel selfie cam. Here, both clearly bump the exposure on me. The Galaxy shot looks more natural on the foreground, but the background looks a little better on the iPhone shot. In low light, the iPhone's shot has boosted exposure and a noticeable amount of noise, but the colors are mostly accurate. The Galaxy does a better job of representing the actual illumination of the scene and keeps the noise down. But unfortunately, those orange tones look way too yellow. For video with these selfie cams, both max out at 4K 60fps. Once again, the iPhone is warmer than the Galaxy, but this time the iPhone is actually more accurate to the scene's real colors. The Galaxy has some seriously tinted blue shadows.
So now let's check out the audio on both of these devices. We'll start off over here with the iPhone Air. What do you guys think? How do I sound? I'm in a relatively busy area, so how is it handling the noise? Then we're gonna move on to the Galaxy S25 Edge. Does it sound any better than the iPhone? What do you think? As always, let's talk about it.
For audio, they're both pretty similar, though the iPhone sounds a little clearer when recording voices, whereas the Galaxy sounds a bit muffled in comparison. Neither of these phones has a dedicated telephoto lens, so if you want to get closer, you're completely relying on digital zoom. Photos at 2x digital zoom are pretty decent on both, but the iPhone keeps a tiny bit more detail. However, at 10x digital zoom, which is the limit for both, the Galaxy absolutely does the best job of cleaning up the image, giving it a clear edge. Now for some low-light examples. In photos with the main camera, the iPhone definitely over-brightens the scene, but in return, it captures much more detail overall. The Galaxy's photo looks a bit dark, but has a better low-light atmosphere. Comparing the iPhone against the Galaxy's ultra-wide night shot, the iPhone looks extremely saturated and ironically turns the curtain purple, a mistake usually committed by the Galaxy. And here's that portrait fail we mentioned. The iPhone completely misses the background blur, while the Galaxy nails it flawlessly. Plus, we prefer the overall look of the shot. For video from the main cams, both look very similar, though the iPhone has a slight edge in smoothly controlling the changing exposure and white balance. And that ultra-wide on the Galaxy, it's not half bad in low light, especially considering the smaller sensor, but we did notice some visible camera shake. So for the cameras, it's totally clear that the Galaxy has the best flexibility thanks to that ultra-wide cam, and while Samsung's post-processing could use a little polish, it's already solid. The iPhone's processing is great, especially in video, but that single lens setup, the missing cinematic mode, and that unreliable portrait feature really cripples the whole experience. But now, let's see how much power these phones pack. The iPhone Air is running Apple's brand new A19 Pro chip. However, it's not the full-fledged version found in the iPhone 17 Pro. This one has 5 GPU cores instead of 6. The Galaxy S25 Edge comes with Qualcomm's Snapdragon 8 Elite for Galaxy, with 2 overclocked cores compared to the vanilla version of the chip. Both phones come with 12GB of RAM. The Air rocks a new Apple N1 chip for wireless stuff and an improved Apple C1X for cellular connectivity. One huge thing to note: this phone is exclusively eSIM only globally, so if your cell carrier doesn't support eSIMs, congrats, you just bought a very expensive iPod Touch. For storage, the iPhone Air has 3 configurations available, while the S25 Edge only has 2, but both start you off at 256GB. We're looking at Apple's NVMe storage on the Air and UFS 4.0 on the Edge. For USB-C speeds, we have a 3.2 port on the iPhone and 2 on the Galaxy. But to really see what these phones can do, we'll throw them into some real-world testing, starting with gaming. We'll run 30-minute sessions with cooldown time in between. First up, Grid Legends in graphics mode. Here, both phones were practically twins with only a single FPS difference. Both even hit the exact same temperature of 47 degrees Celsius. Next, we launched Wuthering Waves and cranked the graphics all the way up. They both managed 60 FPS, but the Galaxy did see slightly more FPS drops than the iPhone. It also got marginally hotter, but nothing to sweat about. Moving on from gaming, we exported 99 photos in Lightroom. The Galaxy and its Snapdragon crossed the finish line first in just over 4 minutes, while the iPhone took more than 7. Next, we rendered a 3-minute 4K 30fps video in CapCut. This time, it was close, but the iPhone snuck a 9-second advantage over the Edge. But now, let's check out some benchmarks. In Geekbench 6, the iPhone absolutely smoked the Galaxy in single-core performance, scoring over 1,000 points more. The iPhone was still the winner for multi-core, but the gap closed significantly. In 3D Mark's Wildlife Extreme Stress Test, the Galaxy totally obliterated the iPhone in the best loop score, hitting nearly 6,000 points. But the lowest loop scores were almost identical, which is a clear sign that the Edge is throttling hard. In Antutu, these aren't directly comparable because of the different operating systems, but for perspective, the Air scored a lot less than the iPhone 17 Pro Max. While the Edge also fell short of the Galaxy S25 Ultra, the gap wasn't nearly as wide here. Ultimately, these two phones offer extremely similar day-to-day and gaming performance, with the iPhone having a tiny hair of an advantage. However, the Galaxy snags a slight edge in benchmark numbers, even if those don't always tell the full story. But no phone is complete without some sweet software features, so let's see what these guys are loaded with. The iPhone is running the brand new iOS 26, which has a redesigned look with the Vision Pro in mind. Meanwhile, the Galaxy just snagged its One UI 8 update, which finally bumps the Android version up to 16. For software support, Apple typically doesn't give a number, but we generally see about 7 years of updates on their devices. Samsung, however, explicitly offers 7 years of support for the Edge. Now, for a quick UI comparison. iOS 26 features that new liquid glass interface, bringing physical materials into the digital space. The whole UI feels fresh with new animations, new icons, and better personalization, like that stretched out lock screen clock. The camera UI also got a more minimalist makeover. And of course, being 2025, we've got some AI thrown in. Apple finally introduced call screening, a feature Google launched with the Pixel 3 and Samsung with the S23. So yeah, they're a little late to the party, but we'll take it. You also get Apple's version of Circle to Search, but honestly, it's not as seamless as Google since you have to take a screenshot to access it. Beyond that, there's the improved Image Playground, which now has ChatGPT integration to help you create even more ridiculous photos. Over on the Galaxy, One UI 8 doesn't really bring a ton of stuff we haven't seen since One UI 7. Just a few little tweaks to system apps here and there. But for AI, you get the Now Brief, which feels a lot like a modern take on the long-deceased Google Now. You also get a bunch of cool tools right in your gallery, like Generative Edit and Sketch to Image for making some true fever dream pictures, or the instant slow-mo feature by just long pressing any video. And of course, being Android, you get the Google Gemini and Google's Circle to Search. With all that covered, let's jump into our final category. Inside these two incredibly thin phones, we've got a 3,149 mAh battery on the iPhone, while the Galaxy has a visibly larger 3,900 mAh cell. When it comes to wired charging, Apple is famously cagey about their numbers, but Samsung gives the Edge a nice 25 watt speed. For wireless charging, the Air supports up to 20 watts using a MagSafe or Qi2 charger. The Edge, on the other hand, is slower at only 15 watts since it's just Qi2 ready, which means it supports the standard, but it is missing the magnets. In our charging test using a 100 watts charger, the Galaxy juiced up its bigger battery in only 1 hour and 7 minutes, whereas the iPhone took 1 hour and 44 minutes. That's rather long considering both phones topped out at the same 19 watts. And finally, let's talk about the damage to your wallet. The iPhone Air starts at a retail price of $999, while the Galaxy S25 Edge starts at $1,099. That's a $100 gap between them, which, for your information, could buy you 463.29 meters of toilet paper. However, we've seen some sweet deals that have brought the Galaxy's price to around $850, so keep an eye out for those sales. All in all, the Samsung Galaxy S25 Edge offers very similar raw performance to the iPhone Air, but it gives you way more camera versatility thanks to that ultra-wide lens. What really seals the deal, though, is the price, as you can find the S25 Edge for significantly less than the Air at third-party sellers like Amazon, giving it a sweet edge over the Air. Oh, and it still has a physical SIM card slot, which is a lifesaver for travelers. The iPhone Air is absolutely a powerful and capable phone, and let's be fair, it is the thinnest phone and feels a bit more comfy in your hand thanks to those rounder corners. However, it doesn't offer massive functional advantages over the Edge, making it the better choice only if you're already locked into Apple's ecosystem. But let's be real for a minute. These phones are trying to create a niche market that most people didn't actually ask for. What users really want is a light and compact phone, not necessarily an ultra slim one, because for about the same money, you can grab classic alternatives that don't make the same sacrifices, like the iPhone 16 Pro, the Galaxy S25 Plus, or even the Pixel 10 Pro. And before you go add Forza Horizon 6 to your wish list, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up and hit subscribe, as we're always testing new devices to help you make the best choice. We'll see you in our next video, and until then, take care.